A public service is a service provided by the government to people living within a certain area, either through the public sector or by financing private provision of said services. Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary describes public service as a service such as education or transport that a government or an official organization provides for people in general in a particular society. It refers to any service intended to address specific needs of members of a community. It is done to help people rather than to make profit.
I do remember that when President Obasanjo came newly in his first term and set up Savicom, it was like a contract. You will go to demand in a public office service within a given time frame. How far have we gone in certain timelines and targets, specific targets that are measurable? And in these two, there has to be effective monitoring and evaluation.
Government ministries, departments, and agencies are set up for public service and are not profit-oriented. Employees of the public service are known as civil servants, and public servants and productivity of any nation, whether effective or not, depends largely on them.
The Federal Civil Service Commission is responsible for the recruitment, the promotion, and discipline of civil servants, whose career also is managed by the head of the civil service of the Federation. That is the frame within which you'll talk about the civil service. But when you're looking at the public service, then public service will be the combination of every arm of government, whether military, paramilitary, civil, or otherwise, that is drawn and controlled by what comes into the federal government, by which here, of course, their remuneration will draw from revenues that accrue to the federal government. That will be the whole gamut of the institutions, the agencies, the departments that make up the public sector.
From my experience, the public servant is by far better in efficiency than the civil servants. It's provable. It cannot be controverted. So the total of this, both the civil servants' work, the public servants' work, the private sector workers, their productivity put together is the national GDP.
The Oxford Learners Dictionary defines productivity as the rate at which a worker, a company, or a country produces goods and the amount produced compared with how much time, work, and money is needed to produce them. Public sector organizations serve the purpose of providing basic public services, while private service companies are owned by individuals and completely profit-driven. And in both of these sectors, stakeholders are on productivity as key.
Truly, in some aspects, the public sector have been productive, but in a good measure of other dimensions, they have not. They have actually failed the public that they are meant to serve. And there are a lot of reasons that this could happen. Essentially, we're looking at the relationships between who is strictly speaking, a public sector player. In Nigeria, for instance, now we have a lot of political appointees, and then we have the technocrats, who are the career public or civil servants. The relationships between them, some other dynamics, might make them not function as productively as they ought to.
The private sector is very important, not only because it creates jobs and ensures a free market economy. It is a vital tax-generating portal for the government and responsible for most of the innovation that drives an economy.
Will any one of us say that at 8 a.m. you go to any of the Nigerian banks any branch that the door is not open for you to transact business. The level of seriousness, the level of professionalism, the level of ethics that is being exhibited in a number of this private sector is commendable. Go to major national and multinational organizations, even some of the SMEs, the small and medium scale enterprises, you will realize that people there are relatively serious. The attitude to work is reasonably commendable. There are rooms for improvement.
The public and private services are made up of human, material, and financial resources. Stakeholders agree that these resources must be harmonized and integrated for the sectors to become effective and productive. This means the task must be determined. Tools and technology towards meeting those tasks must be provided.
You agree with me that you go to some offices, you have to buy file. No photocopy machines, no biro. You have to give somebody all this to do your work for you. There's no efficient system that will accommodate this type of thing. In a private sector, when you get to a private sector, the first thing they do after training is to give you the manual, work manual for your department. It also exists in public sector. When we get to CBN after training, when we came to the office to our department, there's a first general training. After the first general training, when we get to the department where we are assigned, then they will give us our work manual. You go and study it. I don't hope you have such things in any ministry in Nigeria today. It's like you just recruit people, put them on a desk, and somebody will have to tell them, this is what we want to do. That is a gross inefficiency.
You need, for example, decent work environment. You go to quite a number of these, even federal ministries, during the working hours, daytime, there's no electricity supply. Now, how conducive would that environment be? Even fan that can give you a bit of air so that you can have some comfort to work is not, available. And we expect you to deliver the best of service. That is utopian, if I may use the word. I needed, an arm of the police to help with one issue. To my greatest surprise, they said, well, Mr. Idris, we want to help, but we don't even have a car to go to the location of the incident. I had to provide car. Now, should that be the case?
It is the function of the public service to determine the best structure that will optimize the utilization of its resources. It is also the function of the management of any organization to integrate the resources. Therefore, the public service is a means of achieving the best result from combined efforts of the members. In light of this, many school of thoughts believe the Nigerian civil service has not lived up to expectation.
Look at the impact, look at the result. If you go into, look at the time it takes, look at the quality of infrastructure, look at the quality of services that people are getting. Sometimes you go into an office to process something that should take you 5-10 minutes. You are made to spend hours, almost a whole day. That's part of the measure of productivity. And if service delivery is not satisfactory, one should not say and admit that the productivity is of the quality desired.
Most employees in the Nigerian civil service are career civil servants who, when the time comes, move ahead in their careers based on qualifications and seniority with little or no consideration of their productivity to the sector and national development. It is on record that the federal government has been looking into and introducing measures to make the ministries and civil servants within its walls more efficient, productive, and responsive to the need of the public.
There are gadgets today that are quite cheap to buy that will clock people in and out. Start off with that type of gadget in every public office so that you clock in and you clock out. But if you clock in and clock out and nobody looks at the record, then it means it is just adorning wherever you put the device. Meaning, if you put in and have an enforcement system and capacity so that if you come in late, it will be recorded and someone should know that you have come late. There should also be that system that after X number of times that you are late, this will be the step taken against you, meaning sanctions, greater sanctions. And if those sanctions are not applied, then what? It breeds impunity. So the culture of impunity must be tackled.
Experts say Nigeria's civil service is neither working at full capacity nor is productive enough. The fear is that its efficiency and defective service delivery is gradually affecting private sector efficiency and productivity, as one needs to work well to turn the wheel of the other.
If the person who gives approvals or licenses is not doing it as they ought to, it will affect the private practitioner. So if, for instance, I need to have a license from a regulatory agency, I'd better not name any now, or if I have goods that need some certification before I can market them, and there's a delay or some dysfunction along the line, it would affect my own output as a private practitioner. So it is essentially a relationship that one dovetails into the other. Again, the quality of people that it engages to implement those policies would also tell a lot on how the private sector or any other end user will be affected by those policies.
In most free economies like that of the United States and United Kingdom, the private sector is a huge driver of the economy, while the public sector ensures private sector businesses are allowed room to thrive. How productive is the average worker in Western countries? What is the attitude towards work, whether in the public or private service?
I lived in UK, I schooled there. I visited the United States of America several times. I've visited other, parts of the world, the Middle East, the Asian. Let's look at continental Europe and in particular United Kingdom and USA. There are strong institutions, transparency is entrenched, and above all, meritocracy is entrenched, meaning, the very best are being saddled with responsibilities. They put squares in squares. They will not put round pegs in squares. So they get the best of the best.
Our historical dive reveals that the origin of the modern meritocratic civil service can be traced back to imperial examination founded in imperial China. The Britannica summarizes the Chinese civil service as the administrative system of the traditional Chinese government, whose members are selected by competitive examination. The civil service examination of imperial China allowed the state to find the best candidates to serve the offices that governed China. Experts say the exams had multiple levels and were very difficult to pass, and as a result, the system only absorbed the best candidates selected on merit.
Chinese guys, they are from their childhood. And like my son now in the school, he studied very hard. And now he's just in secondary school, but every day he studied to the middle of the night. Yeah, because why? There's so much homework for him to work. Maybe because of the big population. So the competition is very hard and serious. And also when you are working in the company, the same thing. Because so many candidates in the same company, you have so many colleagues. If you are not studying hard, definitely you will outdated and others will fill your gap.
Research shows that Imperial China civil service exams were in place for more than 1,300 years, building the foundation for present-day Chinese civil service and model for civil service systems that developed in other Asian and Western countries. It is a system that is believed to have set the tone for how hard-working the Chinese people are to date. What can the rest of the world learn from the Chinese experience?
The Chinese productivity per day, per hour per day is around $13.8 per hour. So you calculate the 1 month is almost $2,000 for the workers. When you calculate the GDP per capita, you will find the gap from the first tier city and the third and the fourth tier city is a big difference. Maybe, for example, the developed area, because their workers, their productivity is higher than the lower area, especially, for example, the rural area. We have so many poor people in China before. Within the span of the 40 years, with our Chinese great leaders, we have lived out about 800 million people out of this absolute poverty. Yeah, we just achieved this great achievement last year. So productivity also is for the balance to measure the company and also for this area, the workers, their working performance.
Many people describe the Chinese as some of the hardest working people in the world. They work with the driving need to contribute, no matter how small, to national growth using science and technology to ensure better productivity.
Strictly speaking, the civil service ought to be a body that should pride itself on recruiting the best. It should pride itself on going by rules and guidelines that have been set down, which is why if you're appointed, you have a job description, which details your functions. It details your interrelationships, even with other people at work. And so if there are several departments that have to work on a particular document or a program, that should be understood by everyone. You should have people who have qualifications. You're supposed to be recruited on merit. Nepotism should have no place in the civil service or in the public service. And so because in our own setting, a lot of this still goes on, we are hampered.
While the call for reforms of the civil service continues to re-echo in Nigeria, it has become clear over time that the system of recruitment and the lack of training of various personnel in their core mandates on the job has been a problem. Some of the challenges that emanate from these issues has not been good for productivity.
If nepotism is the yardstick for employment, then it means something is suffering, because excellence, merit, experience, and competence will be subordinated to a sanguine relationship. But it shouldn't be so. If you are looking for excellence, you should look for what? Where excellence is. And nobody says that excellence can only come from within a small circle. We must invest in a system that allows competition in a competitive setting, that allows merit to be recognized and rewarded, and equally competence, experience, and capacity to drive our processes.
The establishment of public enterprises is important to prevent the concentration of wealth and means of production as well as exchange in the hands of few individuals or group in the private sector. Public service enterprises are expected to contribute to productive activities, provide employment opportunities, and access to essential goods and services at affordable prices for the public. How efficient has the sector being in achieving its objectives.
An effort should be made to again look at the schedule of duties in the public sector so as to ensure that indeed the number of hands are adequate, the training they have is adequate, the equipment they use is adequate, and therefore the output of their work is also commensurate with all that goes into it. But if there is a disconnect and an imbalance between input and output, naturally, when you do your evaluation, which is something that I'm calling for, then you will discover that you are not getting result for money. And that is what your productivity will show. And at the end of it all, what is the responsibility of government? Government is there to serve. Government is to take care of the welfare of people. Government is to take care of security. How much of it are people getting?
Experts say improved productivity in the public sector can have a fundamental impact on the level of income, consumption, and the welfare of the citizens, particularly as it can put Nigeria on the path of growth and eventually increase national development and output.
We shouldn't rest on our oars in trying to get the service to be more effective, to get more committed civil servants or public servants, because the commitment isn't there. But we should also look at the real macroeconomic level. The society, as we have it now, is circumscribed by all kinds of things, like poverty, unemployment. There are a lot of social dysfunctional things going on. These things impact on the quality of service that we get. So we would say that in the face of all this, the civil service has done well enough, but there's room for improvement.
Will any one of you not come to work when, for example, a news is going to be cast or a program needs to take place? We're having this interview at late hours of the day. And you are still a public servant, maybe not a civil servant. So we should categorize civil servant and public servant and see what are the contributions. If you go to a typical, ministry, whether state or federal, what do you see? At 9 a.m., 10 a.m., people are walking in.
We are in front of Secretariat. If you enter offices now, you will be surprised to see several of them lying down at this time of the day, of the morning. They are already lying down sleeping. Some have not even left their house. There are files on their table that they need to attend to.
While some Nigerians are calling for a total overhaul of the civil service, others have suggested the use of technology to enhance productivity and help track the performance of staff.
Productivity is affected by both the attitude to work, the level of training that staff needs to be given in terms of skills and competencies that either need to be impacted or sharpened, and of course the pay. Needless to say, there's this adage that you pay peanuts, you end up with monkeys. I'm sorry to use the phrase, no insult intended.
As experts caution public servants against deviant behaviors such as lateness to work, loitering in office premises, gossiping, corruption, as well as other negative attitudes that reduce efficiency in the public service, they also advocate reward for good public service with integrity, loyalty, impartiality, and objectivity.
With good procedure on ground, you divide the job to each person. Half of the people in civil service will be out of the job. I can confidently say that. So there is a need for job audit in the civil service. Then there is a need for them to also put in place good procedure for each ministry, departments, and agencies. This is the procedure. This is the work we have here. We should know the job we are going to do. Nobody will say that I'm going to work, I don't know what I'm going to do. It shouldn't be.
The call is for a productive and effective public service that puts the interest of the public ahead of personal interest towards the realization of sustainable national development.
The quality of our education must be improved upon because it is from the institutions that these persons are trained that they will graduate into the civil service. Then while in the civil service, they will put in what they have learned. So don't just look at the recruitment point, look at the educational background and training as well. So that's my advocacy. But then more directly to do with the recruitment, merit, and merit should be the driving factor.